Hello, it's Rebecca here from Precious Pages Papercraft, and today I'm designing for Papermaze and I'm working with the wonderful Beyond the Sea collection from P13 paper products. I had a rough idea in my head of what I wanted to do with this layout, so I thought I'd sit down at my desk one evening and just have a bit of a play and see if I could get the idea out of my head and onto the paper. And before I knew it, I had a completed layout in front of me, and it had only been 45 minutes. So it's the quickest I think I've ever put a layout together. But I totally put that down to this collection. It's just so easy to work with, and I'm really enjoying it. So I wanted to have a ship steering wheel. I'm sure it has a proper name, but I can't figure it out. So I wanted to have this wheel in the background, and I wanted to cut it from the patterned paper number 3, which is that wood panel effect. So I found an image of a ship wheel online, copied it into Silhouette Studio and traced it, and had a bit of a play removing bits and pieces until I had just the outline, and then I cut that. Then I offset that to make it slightly bigger and cut it again on that brown basil cardstock you can see there, which is called Bark. So I had it cut twice, and I wanted to have the brown basil one behind the wood effect one, just as a kind of shadow and to give it a bit more separation from my background. So I've cut those out, and then I've trimmed white cardstock down and trimmed that basil down and layered them just to make a kind of border and a frame around the edge of the page. And of course I've distressed all the edges because that's one of the things I always do, but it works really well. I love distressed edges, especially for a beachy layout. I just think it's just adds such a lovely texture. So I've stuck all of those together, and now I'm just layering up my wheel, and that's going to sit in the centre of my page. I've stuck the two wheels together just flat with PVA glue, and then I'm going to mount the whole thing. So I lift the whole thing up off the page using craft foam to add a bit of dimension. So I just cut some thin strips of foam there, and I'm just going to place them all on the back of my wheel. So I'm already liking where this layout is going. It's the idea that was in my head is slowly coming to life on the page in front of me, which makes me really happy because that doesn't often happen. So I put a load of glossy accents on the back of my file here, ready to turn it over and stick it down, and then decided I want to add a tiny bit of really soft mixed media to my background. So I pulled out a few blue distress inks and distress oxides and one of my blending brushes. I just had a bit of a play on some scrap paper just to see how deep the colours were, and just to make sure I could get the right blue. I wanted something soft, but something that would stand out against the brown of that wheel. And in the end I settled on a distress ink in Salty Ocean. And I've marked out the points on that white cardstock where each of the points, I'm not sure what to call them, of the wheel will sit, so I know where to apply my mixed media. I'm literally just rubbing that on with that blending brush, just really softly, just behind where that wheel will sit, so you can see it underneath, but it's not so obvious that it's going to take over the page. As you can see, it looks a bit of a mess without the wheel sat on top, but once that wheel sat on top, you can just about see that colour creeping through all around the edges, and I really like how that looks. My initial plan was to offset my photo and have it onto the right hand corner there, but when I looked at it, my husband and my son are both staring directly down the camera, with their bodies facing on, so I thought actually it would be better positioned into the centre of the wheel. So that's where I'm going to put it. I've backed it onto some patterned paper from the collection. Bear with me, I'll get you the number. That's number 5, which is it's like a blue pattern, or pale blue paper that's got a soft white pattern on it. And I've just added a layer of that behind it. And then I decided I wanted to bring in some more cheesecloth. I used it on my last layout, and I love using it on beachy layouts. It just adds so much texture. So I'm just kind of weaving that in amongst my wheel there, and I'm just going to have it on the bottom section of my layout. And at this stage I wasn't even sure if I was going to keep it there. I was just having a bit of a play, but decided I really liked it, so it will become a feature. And then I've got this wood veneer piece here that says Smile that will be my title. So I've got loads of bits and pieces here that I fussy cut from paper number 7 for my last layout. I literally sat down one evening and fussy cut the whole 12x12 sheet, and it gave me loads of bits of ephemera to use. So I've got loads of those left over that I'm just positioning either side of my photo just to create a couple of clusters. And I've also fussy cut some of the florals from paper number 4 that I'm putting either side of my photo there. And literally this is how the layout came together. It just happened in front of me. I had all these pieces fussy cut and ready to go. So I just started kind of building some clusters either side just to see what it looked like, and decided I really liked it, so just stuck everything literally where it fell on the page. I'm sticking that cheesecloth down with glossy accents just to make sure it definitely stays in place. Don't want that lifting off at a later date. And then I'm just adding some foam behind my photo to raise that up from the wheel a bit. I always find if you add foam behind a photo, it lifts it off the page and helps to draw your eye to it a bit more, especially if you've got a really busy background. So that's going to sit in the middle there, and now I'm just going to work on adding those clusters back in with some PVA glue and some foam pads. Again, just adds a bit more dimension and texture to the layout, which I really love on beachy pages. So I've got one of those large floral clusters either side of my photo from paper number 4, and then all the other bits you see here are fussy cut from paper number 7. And it's just a case of sticking them back down. Overlapping them to add a bit more depth to the page, and then they're all completely relevant. My husband and my son here are on the beach at Compton Bay on the Isle of Wight. There's no lighthouse there, but you know what, lighthouses are beachy, so I've added one of those on. I've got a lantern there with a candle in. Obviously we didn't have one of those to hand, but it's beachy and it just worked really, really well with this layout. So everything that's on here is kind of beachy and relevant, even though it's not in my photo. I just love how it all works together. Now I've stuck that wood veneer piece down with some glossy accents, and I'm going to jazz that up a bit in a minute, just trying to decide if I want to add a few more bits and pieces or not. So this is another new product, the Papermaze. These are Shimmers paints. This one is called Anchors Away. It's an original Shimmers, so it's a wet paint in a pot, and I just stirred it a bit with my paintbrush to get all the shimmer moving, because all the shimmer sits at the bottom if they're left for a while. So I just stirred it all up to activate that shimmer, and I'm just painting that directly onto that piece of wood veneer there. No gesso or anything, just straight on, and it's really, really easy to paint these on. It's really therapeutic, they just go on so nicely. And it's given that wood veneer piece such a lovely beachy colour, but it's also given it loads and loads of shimmer. I've got these large circular tags here. I was going to try and get a couple on, but I decided they were just a bit too big. So instead I'm using some from sticker sheet number 3. I've got, I've put one either side. One is of a boat and the other is just of some waves, but it brought in a darker blue tone that worked really well with that Shimmers Anchors Away colour. So I've popped one of those either side, just nestled in amongst those clusters. And then I wanted to have a little something up in that top left hand corner. So they've got tags number 3, that pack is there, and they're really narrow tags with lovely designs on. They really are stunning. And I just went through and decided that this one fitted best with the colour scheme I had going on. So I think it's another of those lanterns. So I've already used one on the right hand side, so that tied in nicely. I also fussy cut a couple of shells from a different patterned paper. Bear with me, I've just cut that one up for another layout. That is pattern paper number 1, I think, those shells. but they didn't really work well. The colour wasn't right, it was too similar to the tag and I needed something to contrast with it. So instead I'm going to use one of the green leaves from paper number 7 that I'd fussy cut. And I'm just adding a tiny bit more of that blue ink underneath. And then I will stick these down. So the leaf is going down flat and I'm going to raise the tag up on foam. I'm not using the whole tag, I'm going to cut it in half and shorten it just because otherwise it would have hung too far down. So I'm going to stick that down and then cut it and just distress around that top edge because I've distressed the rest of it. Trying to make that starfish work again. In the end it gets popped down there on the bottom right. And finally, I just wanted to add a little bit more detail to that wheel. So I've got a Uniball Signo white gel pen, and initially I just drew lines on the left hand side of everything just to kind of make it look like it had a bit of shadow and light effect going on. But as I was looking at it, I realised actually it would look nice just to have all the lines drawn. So I just draw around all the edges. You've got an outer border and an inner border around all the pieces. And that just gives it a little bit more detail and a bit more lift. And that's the layout complete. So like I said, it literally took 45 minutes, which is my quickest ever layout. But because this collection has so many bits and pieces to fussy cut, you've got so much to hand to use. So the layouts just really fall together really, really nicely. And that's it done. So thank you very much for joining me today. Please do head over to the Papermaze blog if you'd like to see direct links to all the products I've used. Alternatively, the collection is now up on the Papermaze website, so if you want to go and have a look at it there, please do. You've got all the papers and tags and ephemeras, and it really, really is a gorgeous collection. So thanks again for joining, and I will leave you with the close-ups.